Hey, everyone. So I want to talk to you about why do we need a good design system and how to implement one. I got to say that I was a little bit afraid, being the last, but I'm a little bit more afraid that I'm after Adas because we should have been aligned. You will see it in a minute. You know what? Let's dive into and start. So I want you all to meet Bob. Pretend you haven't seen the previous talk. OK, bear with me. So this is Bob. Bob has recently joined to a new startup company. It's called Squid Game. I believe they're in the gaming industry, if I'm not mistaken. This is the product team. It's funny that everyone sees the product team in the same way. And what happens is that you join a new company. I think everyone has been there. You join a new company. You start building a new product from scratch. And it's awesome, and it's cool. And you add a new feature. You add some new components. You get a page. You do something. It gets bigger and bigger by the day. And then what happens is that the product managers add more features, right? So then the product gets a little bit more complicated. And then you hire more people, right? You hire more developers. You hire more, for example, you hire a VP product, right? And then the app gets even more complicated. And then what happens? And then you're kind of like, in a way that, OK, so what's what? I don't know what's going on. I mean, do I do this in this way, in another way? And then all of a sudden, you get the developers kind of like run for their life and do whatever they want to do because there is no system, there is no technique, there is no way of doing that. And we kind of had the same problem at Just Eat Takeaway. There are more than 200 front-end developers in one single company. That is huge. So we thought about that, and we ended up realizing that we need a design system. So what is a design system? A design system is a contract between developers and designers. Easy as that. It makes everyone a little bit more happy and easier, right? Cool. So there's the famous blog post by Brad. I forgot his name. That is talking about, so what he did is that he kind of compared the design system as we think about it to biology. So what he did is that he said, break everything into smaller parts. So if you break something to an atom, let's call it an atom component, once we have enough of those, we can combine those into molecules. When we have enough of molecules, we can combine those into an organism, and then so on and so on. OK, so let's dive into that for a second. So here are 3 different examples of atom components. We have label, we have input, we have button. As you can see, all of them are pretty straightforward, pretty basic. There's nothing special about it, right? They're all atom components, very basic, as I said. But what happens if I combine those 3? I get a molecule. I get something that is a little bit bigger. And what happens next is that I take a few of those molecules, and then I get an organism. In this case, I get a menu, right? We have the navbar, we have the logo, we have the search the site component on the right, and so on and so on. OK? The next level is to combine a few of those. And then we get something that he called a template. So, and it's now starting to look like a page, right? Something that we can be familiar with and understand. Not just us, the developers, but the designers as well. So the next level is to add data. So what happens when we add the data? We get an instance of the template. And then everything is starting to make sense. Because we build, think about it as Lego bricks. we started with the small parts, small Lego bricks, right, the atom components. And then we got something a little bit more bigger, and then a little bit more bigger, and then we get a page, which is kind of cool. In case you're still not convinced that you need this or you want this, let's talk about the pros that you will gain out of the box. So I think the first one, and maybe the most important one, that you're aligned with design, which means that everything is in sync. You talk the same language, use the same terminology. By the way, in our case, we use Figma. So when a designer or a developer or a product manager, they say, I need the button component, or I need a specific color, we all talk the same language. OK, you will see it in a minute. This is an example of our color palette. So if you know what, let's zoom in about the primary brand. So in our case, yeah, we do love the orange color, as you can tell. We have light, regular, and dark. And when we put that in the code, as you can see, we're using tokens, and they mean the same name. We're using the same naming conventions. And then from that point on, everything is in order. When a designer, a product, a developer says, use primary brand regular, everyone understands what that person is talking about. Easy as that. Another pro, which is huge, is you gain out of the box UI UX consistency. Because if you think about it, if you reuse the components and you reuse the colors and you reuse everything that you got, there's no way to use a different instance or something that might look a little bit different, which is cool. And also, you get pixel-perfect design. And the reason for that is because everything that we do, we make sure that is pixel-perfect by the atom design. So once we grow those components into larger ones, into bigger ones, we get that pixel-perfect design as well, out of the box. Another cool pro is there's no code duplication. Because as I said, if you reuse the components, there's no point of duplicating your code. You don't need to. You're not able to, but you don't need to as well. And it's also something that you gain. There's no CSS overrides, and this is something that everyone loves, right? And then what happens? Bob is happy, right? Because he can work a lot faster. Development cycle is way faster. There's a lot of reuse. There's no overrides. Everyone is happy. Bob is happy. The users are happy. And then what happens when the users are happy and everyone is happy? Bob gets a Tesla. True story. No, I'm kidding. I want to go over some tips and tricks on how to achieve this easily. So I think the number one is to use tokens, but not just that. When you do use tokens, I will explain in a minute what is a token, use it with a business logic. So let me give you an example. Remember the color palette that we were using? So as you can see, we're using tokens, which is technically constants. And yeah, I know we can use CSS variables as well. You can use that as well. That's not the issue here. You can use whatever you want. In our case, we use SAS constants, which are tokens. And the other thing that I wanted to say is that note that instead of using orange or blue or red for the feedback arrow, for example, we use naming conventions that has business value, business logic. And the reason we do that is because we want to keep it modular. We want to keep it generic. So in case one of the designers wakes up in the morning and says, hey, you know what? I want the feedback arrow to be pink instead of red. So I don't need to change all of my code. I just go into this single file, colors.css. I change the exa, and boom, everything is awesome. Cool. Use an 8-point grid system. That's pretty common these days. I think that the best way to explain this is that it's really easy to divide and multiply resolutions, numbers by 8, which makes everything easier. And this is also something that we keep using all across our products in the design system. Split components. So for an example, what we did recently is that we mapped the different titles and different text variations that we have in the product. And as you can see, we have 3 sizes of body and 4 sizes of heading, of titles. But we ended up splitting it into 2 different components. One is title, one is text, making it very easy to use. That was my next point, make components easy to use. What I mean by that is that, let's say a developer wants to use a header of size 3, H3. Okay, so all he needs to do, he or she, is go in and do import the title component, type title.h3. I can also use pass it a prop, like a weight, if I want to customize it for any reason. And that's all I have to do. Really easy, really straightforward. Think about it as like a black box that is very strict. Notice that I'm not allowed, I can't pass a class name. I can't override the CSS. In case I do want to make a few changes, I can do that. So as discussed previous, use Storybook. Storybook is an awesome tool, very easy to use. As shown in the previous talk, I was hoping to show you our Storybook, but it's not public yet. So here is an example of how easy to use. So technically, what it is that is a catalog of all of your components. This is something that you can give your designers, developers, products. They can play with it. You get a full instance with all of the props, all of the settings of all of your components. Nice. The last thing is that once you have Storybook, the next thing you want to do is run automated UI test. There's a lot of cool tools for that. I like Chromatic, mostly because it's really easy to implement and use. Let me show you a real quick video. So what it does is that, think about it this way. Let's say you create a new pull request, okay, with changes of one of your components. It creates a snapshot of your Storybook, compares it to the snapshot of your Storybook that is in master branch, and then it will tell you if there is a change. Okay, and then you need to decide if that change was by design, if it's OK and acceptable. And if not, you just need to go dive in and make the changes required, and everyone is happy. So it's another great way of making sure that the UI doesn't break. In case you want more, there's the full version of this talk in a meetup on YouTube, so look it up, from a meetup that we hosted a month ago. And that's it, guys. Thank you.